Welcome to the present moment. Welcome to the Darla Beam Leadership and Coaching Podcast. Welcome. Thank you so much. Super excited to have you. I'm welcoming Dr. Habib Sadeghi. He's the founder of Beehive Healing of Integrative Medicine. Beehive of Healing Integrative Medical Center in Angora Hills, California. That's quite the mouthful. You are also the author of 2 books, The Clarity Cleanse, 12 Steps to Finding Renewed Energy, Spiritual Fulfillment, and Emotional Healing, and Within, a Spiritual Awakening to Love and Weight Loss. And you're also known as the Old Soul Doctor.
Some people call me that. Yes.
I love that. I want to hear about that. Why did they call you that?
Well, I think my philosophy is that we are souls having a human experience. And that trickles down into what I do as a family doctor. And that when a person comes in, it's very easy to want to reduce them down to a disease. And instead of doing that, it's really connecting to that soul, to that wholeness, and then seeing what the discomfort, the challenge, the disease, the message that it has for them as in their body in service of elevating them, uplifting them. And what is their entelechy? Why are they here? So that's, I think that has something to do with it, that philosophy and that approach to what I do as a family doctor.
So you're really looking at them as a soul, from the place of a soul.
Yeah, and it's not very esoteric. It simply means, for instance, a person can come in with lung cancer or a neurological issue, MS or Parkinson's disease, and most people they come in and they're very contracted. They come in, they're very hurt. They think they're gonna die. And so that approach, it doesn't really allow them to be creative. It doesn't allow them to look at the opportunities that's there for healing. And if we take the time and if we understand that whatever it is that they're going through, it's not a mistake, it's part of their journey. This concept of entelechy, which is the forward movement towards the evolutionary process and growth of every living thing. For instance, if you get an acorn, and if you plant an acorn, the acorn will go through what the acorn has to go through to become an oak tree. You see? Right. So that wholeness of it. And I think sometimes dis-ease, a medical challenge, plays a role to be able to push us forward and upward.
On the evolutionary front.
Yeah, to awaken. I mean, when you really think about it, there is, there's this tennis ball that's called Earth, that it's rotating around itself and it's creating night and day, and it's getting closer and further away from this giant basketball that it's 1 million times larger called the sun. As we get close, we create summer, and as we get further away, we create winter. And then we have fall and spring in between. But this thing is just floating, and there are 7.85 billion people on this tennis ball. So there is a mystery here, and there is also a beauty in that awakening.
Yeah, I love that. And is that, so I was reading about the spiritual psychology emphasizing consciousness, health, and healing. Is that what you're pointing to?
Yes, which is really the type of medicine that I practice. It's referred to as Entelechy Medicine. That, yes, I have a prescription pad, and, I have my stethoscope, and I was a clinical instructor at UCLA Santa Monica. I'm a clinical facilitator instructor at Western University of Health Sciences. I train medical students, residents, fellows. I train other physicians. But to really stop the madness, the chaos, and the reduction of turning this a sophisticated, amazing human being into a medical diagnosis that now we want to give them multiple medication and to stop their symptoms, to asking deeper questions and inquiring about their biography and how their biography, what they've been upstream, might be affecting their physiology, their biology, downstream. That's really a form of medicine that I practice.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I love that. I love that. One of the other things that I read about you was there's equal importance, like, so it's a balance, equal importance on the well-being of the patient as well as the physical. Would you differentiate between the two of those things for the audience members?
Sure. So the idea is that consciousness precedes phenotypic expression. What that means is our thoughts, feelings, emotions collectively influence everything about us. And our thoughts, feelings, emotions, collectively known as our consciousness, they come before the phenotypic expressions, the shifts, the changes that we see in our body, including diseases. So that's really the idea of consciousness, health, and healing. So if from that perspective, then we can see that on one end of the spectrum, we might have the mind, and on the other side, we have the body. But they're connected. The same is true if you look at the light, right? The light, the spectrum of the light that is visible with our eyes, it has a spectrum, right? So it starts, we can see the longest wavelength, it's red, and then there's orange, and then there's yellow, and then green, and then blue, and then indigo, and then violet. So anything that is beyond violet, we say ultra, above ultraviolet. Anything below red, we say infra, below red, infrared, right? But it's continuation of the same spectrum. So the idea that mind and the body, they're really different, of the same spectrum, that's what it is. So in that context, then we can comprehend and we can understand how the body sometimes become if you would, the theater for the mind. So a mind that is anxious, a mind that has significant amount of anxiety, defenses, and doesn't have the language or an outlet of how to process, metabolize the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, then it shoves it deep inside the body. And, it's not a far-fetched idea for a person that comes in and they're talking about how so-and-so is a pain in their neck. And then as you're talking, they'll tell you about how they have degenerative joint disease in their neck. They have chronic neck pain. They might say, so-and-so is a pain in my tush. And then when you get a medical history, they tell you that they have hemorrhoids. They say, I can't really stomach so-and-so. And you take a medical history and they're on purple pill because they have gastroesophageal reflux disease. They have acid reflux. They literally cannot digest their lives. They cannot stomach their lives.
And it's because of this connection between the mind and the body that
absolutely
causing that, because they're all connected, is what you're saying. So then what would you do? What would you do with a patient like that?
Yeah. So every person is different. But the idea is to, first of all, to create the awareness that there is a continuum, right? It doesn't matter whether you come into this hall from the physical or from the mind aspect. It's the same hall and they're interconnected. That awareness is the first step, right? Okay. That awareness. And it could be as simple as, there are a lot of CEOs. I mean, take a look at all the CEOs that they're dropping dead from cancer. Why? Because they live a lifestyle that's consistent with growth out of harmony, that they just keep growing. So if you're growing at a rate in an organization, it's not a far-fetched idea that you will give rise to an organism that is malignant, that is tumorous, that keeps growing in the body. So what would be a good place to start? It could be a form of journaling that I recommend. I refer to it as purged emotional writing. And your listeners can go to beingclarity.com, and they can download. There's a handout in terms of clear instructions. There's a way that they can journal that will help them to be able to connect with their thoughts, connect with their feelings, connect with their emotions. And there's a form of writing that tends to be very cathartic. So writing can have a purgatory process. So purging emotional writing, and it's only 12 minutes a day, but it creates such a spaciousness inside for all of us.
How does it, I'm curious, 'cause I've actually been journaling a lot lately. And it has been very helpful and very cathartic. And I'm just curious, like how does that connect? How is it helping me get it out? Like what's the process in my brain? I mean, I guess I don't need to understand how my car works, to get in it and drive it. And just for the sake of the listeners, and we have the expert here with us.
Of course.
How does that work?
Yeah, it's a very intelligent question. If you were to take a look at a human being, right, they're fired all the time. You keep activating different thoughts depending on, right now you're looking at me and you're doing your best to listening to me, but the way that I phenotypically look like, it could be, it could be creating different thoughts and different things inside your brain. So all these thoughts, they create chemicals. They create neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are different chemicals in the body that they do different things, different functionality. A neurotransmitter is serotonin, melatonin, histamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and so forth. So these neurotransmitters, and they activate and they create feelings. Right? And these feelings could be happiness, it could be joy, it could be shame, it could be guilt, you name it, the core affect feelings. And these feelings, then what they do is they upregulate and they shift and change our hormonal system. Growth hormone, DHEA, testosterone, pregnenolone, progesterone, different estrogens, and so forth. And then these hormones, by upregulating, they create certain emotions. And if you have certain emotions for a length of time, then you create what's referred to as emotional set point or a temperament. There are people that they're constantly happy most of the time. Every time you see them, they're smiling. They're relaxed. You enjoy being with them, right? You seek them out. There are people that they're constantly anxious, miserable. You dread them. If you see them across the street, you just run away. You don't want to call them because every time you talk to them, they're anxious. They're telling you how terrible the world is.
Yes.
So these are temperaments, right? And these temperaments, okay, they circle back, they feed back, and they create thoughts. They create feelings, they create neurotransmitters, they create different hormonal system that it just creates a vicious cycle and it locks us in, right? We feel guilty, we feel shameful, we feel grateful, we feel in love, we feel uplifted, and so forth. So when you get a piece of paper and you have a cocoon, a place where you could actually sit down with a pen or pencil, and you could write down and you ask yourself open-ended question, what's present for me? Just what's present for me? What are my thoughts? What are my feelings? How did I sleep last night? How did I feel going through that project, going through that meeting? People that they go through one argument or a particular difficult experience, and they don't know how to process it, and they carry it inside. And now all of a sudden there is an opportunity, an avenue, and the physical movement and connecting inside our body. And I feel hurt. I feel excluded. I feel disrespected. I feel really fucking angry. I can't believe, she did that, or he did that, or this is the result. I can't believe I didn't get that raise. There are people that they're hurt. I can't believe that, oh my God, little John is going through so much, and I feel really hurt. I feel that I let my son, my daughter down. I feel guilty that they're going through some challenges. Whatever, you just write it out. And at the end of it, you burn it. It's in the burning of seeing that you're burning it and giving yourself the dignity, and you're not worrying about, well, what if someone sees it? They're going to judge me. They're not going to love me, or I don't want anyone to know that I've had this experience. What you reveal, you heal. And that's really something that we can completely experience. And it's, one of the most, people see it as a secret lore of magic, but it really isn't. This was accessible for thousands of years in a systemic medical models, such as Oriental medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, medicine of Far East, that they've used it.
Yeah, I love that. What you reveal, you heal. So, so it could be something as simple as journaling, doing this kind of journaling, and also burning. So I mentioned I've been journaling a ton. I'm curious, because I saw how many offerings you have on your website. Got a lot of really cool stuff. So for someone like me, so the stuff I'm journaling about right now is stuff that I'm working with a coach, and it's systemic stuff that comes up again and again in relationship with other. And I kind of have traced some of it back to like stuff with my dad, or, growing up and that kind of thing. And it's something that's that's lingering, or several things that linger. It's unconscious ways that I'm habituated to think. And I'm wondering, if the journaling doesn't work, or it works to some extent, but I still have some of that stuff, what other modalities would you recommend?
Sure. You come across as someone that is very authentic and very honest and very vulnerable. And it seems to me that you're doing what you're doing because you want to be an example for others. And in service of supporting you, and maybe, supporting your listeners, would you be willing to be a little bit more specific in terms of what might be something that might find challenging in regards to your dad, or a significant other?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, we can start with my dad. So what I'm finding in my journaling is that my dad was a first generation American, and his family came from the Middle East. And so there's a way, I think, even though his father died young, he didn't grow up maybe with some of the stigmas, or I guess, I don't know, habituated ways of thinking, but somehow I still picked up like this idea that maybe women are lesser than men, or not as important as men, or they're there to serve man. That would be one thing. But most of them fall somewhere in there, or, my career is not as important as my significant other, and I need to make myself small, or some of those things, like not good enough, essentially, is underneath all that.
Got it. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Now, how is that way of thinking, how is that serving you?
How is it serving me? Oh, that's not the question I thought you were going to ask.
What's the payoff?
Payoff.
What's the payoff?
The payoff is,
what's the payoff for you?
Yeah, I don't have to put myself out there and I don't have to risk take. I don't have to take risks.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're not willing to sit in front of the bus and it's the back of the bus, it's a lot more comfortable because you don't need to risk anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's because there are a lot of, as Einstein said, there are a lot of mediocre minds that they attack the brilliance of being a genius, of being a trailblazer and wanting to start a new conversation. But
Yeah.
it's very comfortable. It's very comfortable to see yourself as a second-class citizen. It's very comfortable because you don't have to risk failing. You show me a winner and I show you a person that has failed, including the very light that we're using, the very
Exactly.
technology, right?
Right.
But it's, are you willing to risk being alive fully and, you know, and make it full of yourself?
Definitely.
If I want to, say that again?
I said definitely, yes.
Yeah, that's what it means to be alive. One of my, you know, look, if I wanted to play it safe, I would find out exactly who you are, what you do, why am I on the podcast? No, I mean, there was a request, and I'm like, to the extent that I can be of service, here I am. I clear my schedule between seeing patients, and you know, I share from my experiences, from my failures, my success, and I speak from my heart. And if someone is out there that they're going through difficult time, whether it's cancer, whether it's a terminal cancer, whether it's infertility, and whether it's MS, ALS, Parkinson's disease, chronic pain, depression, and just the idea that, wait, are you saying that what I'm thinking here, even though you can't see it, it influences my physical being? Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not the first one. They've said it for thousands of years. You know, this idea that disease, it has nothing to do with our genome to some extent. Because if you look at it, if that was the case, in the year 2000, we mapped out the entire human genome. And we thought that we could get rid of all the diseases. Well, that's nearly 20 years ago. Nothing. Since 1970, when Richard Nixon declared war on cancer, the rate of cancer keeps going up. See, this idea of attacking something doesn't work. How do I know that? I know that because look at, you know, the 1947 Alexander Fleming, we got penicillin as an antibiotics. And we thought panacea, we can get rid of all the infections. That's not the case. Right now down the street in the local hospitals, there are children that a simple bacteria, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, that used to create otitis media or middle ear infection, and we could put them on some antibiotics as simple as penicillin and amoxicillin, and it would wipe it out. Those kids are dying because now we've created bacteria that they're completely superbug. They're resistant to every single penicillin that we have. So the idea is, here is a particular misunderstanding or misidentification or misinterpretation or misperception that maybe your father held or your mother held, or somehow you got infected with it. And, you know, acceptance is a good place. Just accept it, that, oh, you know, here's the thought process. It's present again. In the book, The Clarity Cleanse, I talk about acceptance as a specific step. There are 12 steps, you know, that to be able to create that spaciousness that we refer to as clarity, mental clarity, to be able to think clearly, making decisions that can really make a difference in the world, you know, and to be part of a larger conversation. So I talk about forgiveness. You know, under Department of Justice, there is Department of Pardon, and it's usually headed by an MD, JD, PhD, JD, a person who has a doctorate in philosophy or in something, and then they also have a judiciary degree. They're an attorney. And whoever you want to be pardoned, you fill out the application, you send it in, it gets reviewed, and it just sends up to the president. But, you know, I spent 6 months studying the very language that the presidents used when they were pardoning people. They say, by the power invested in me as the President of the United States, I pardon so-and-so. I mean, some of the pardons, they're people that they owed IRS, Internal Revenue Service, like millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And with just a stroke of a signature, by the power invested in me as the President of the United States, I pardon so-and-so. And they're pardoned. They're done. So using forgiveness as a therapeutic healing modality. Imagine every time that you take a shower before you step outside, you baptize yourself. And spiritually speaking and metaphorically, that you really see yourself as the water is washing over you. You really see your little girl inside and you say, I love you. You are sitting in front of the bus. You're important to me. You're precious. You're first class. And I'm just so lucky to be in touch with you and to listen to you. And by the power invested, all the resources invested in me, I forgive myself. I forgive my own limitations, misperceptions, any transgenerational patterns or behavior or limited beliefs from my father or my mother's sides or upstream, and I let go. And a new truth that I subscribe to is that I am love.
That's beautiful. I love that. So a lot of our listeners are parents. What advice do you give parents who bring their kiddos in to see you?
I just did the foreword for a book by Darby Fox, and who's just an incredible therapist that works with children, specifically teenagers and adolescents. And one of the things that I've seen is that it's very easy to be a parent, to judge and to get, into this mindset and, and to want to attack your child because you want, you love them. You want them to do the right thing. But that's a mistake. And here's why. I have a pack of cigarettes in here. And the reason I have this pack of cigarettes, and I use this to communicate when I communicate with parents or patients in general, is when you look at every single pack of cigarettes, it says, it tells you, Surgeon General, warning. It tells you that you're going to get lung cancer. How many people are smoking right now and into lung cancer, right? That's just smoking themselves to death. Information doesn't do anything. By keep repeating the same thing and telling Johnny or Jill or that what they should do or they shouldn't do and how they it's not going to even get in and register. However, if you love them unconditionally, then that creates a shift and change. It's then that they will get touched, moved, and inspired, and things will start shifting. You see, most human beings, they focus on content, but it's the context. It's the relationship that really becomes important. If there is no relationship, it doesn't matter what you tell them. It's just you create an againstness, that they don't trust you, they don't hear you, and they're going to turn towards other people that they have limited behavioral pattern. And that's how peer orientation gets locked in, right? Gets crystallized.
Right. Well, I love that you brought that in. This month, we're talking about relationships, and this week it's healing relationships. And so, what we focused on last week was really relationship with self first, and then building relationships outside. Because if we don't build a relationship with self, or we have a dysfunctional relationship with self, then, the relationship we build outside of self is dysfunctional. And so I love what you're saying about loving your child unconditionally. Right.
Yes.
And in terms of healing, so for those listeners who maybe already have some issues, and we have the holidays coming up too, right? So a lot of drama goes down during the holidays. So I love this unconditional loving them. So what would you say to listeners who already maybe have some issues happening that have, maybe been from the past? What are some things that they can do tactically loving unconditionally, maybe underneath that heading of loving unconditionally, like example.
Sure. Yeah. Healing, for me, the way that I define healing is application of loving to places inside that they're hurting. There
Okay.
is no physical, the way that I look at the world, there is no physical symptom that does not start right inside. It doesn't. And there are countless level of research and books and scientists and sages that they've talked about that. So a good place to start is by taking the time, being reflective, slowing down. We have a nonprofit organization called Love Button Global Movement. The tagline for Love Button is pause and love, creating that spaciousness, that pause, and then love. Most human beings, they're, when you look at, and I hear it and I see it. I mean, I'm not a veterinarian, I'm a family doctor. So everyone that comes in, they're human beings. So I listen. And the way that I listen is really heart-centered listening, because, over 10,000 patients, they know that there's absolutely no judgment here. So they share. Most human beings, they're starting their day by their cell phone. The cell phone is their alarm. They wake up, they pick it up on their way to the bathroom. They're checking their social media. They're checking their email. They're getting on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and so forth. And now all of a sudden they get so emotional that they can't urinate. They can't poop. They're just sitting there for hours staring at this thing. Mm-hmm. And that's how they're setting themselves up for the entire day. And they're not aware that priming themselves for that level of anxiety, that level of external orientation, that you keep looking outside for approval, might not be a good way to really prime yourself. I mean, look at when you go to a restaurant. Why is it that every time you go to a restaurant, they're bringing you bread and they're bringing you olive oil? Well, it's because they're priming you to be able to eat. They're trying to activate the saliva, the digestive system. And you have an over tendency to overeat, which creates endorphins. And now you feel good, and you associate that feeling good and satiated to the restaurant. And then you're going to have some leftover that they give it to you in a doggy bag. Now with the bag that has their logo, now you become their, you do all the marketing. As you're walking around, everyone sees that, says, oh, wow, you ate that. Wow, I should check it out. See, everything, there is a reason. Why is that? That every single fast food restaurant, their logo, it's the same color: red, orange, yellow. Why? Because these are the three colors that they make you horny. They make you hungry, right? That's why. That's why all these fast food restaurants, they use the same color. Why? Because they activate different thoughts, different neurotransmitters. They activate different hormones, and trying to physiologically create different emotions for you. That's what it means to live a life that is externally oriented. When now all of a sudden you care more about how many friends you have on social media, how many likes because you said something, instead of creating this spaciousness of sitting across from another human being and soul gazing with them. Well, how are you doing? What's occurring for you? Gosh, this seems really challenging. And what are some of the vulnerabilities that are resurfacing for you? We have lost, or we're losing, or we're very close to losing what it means to be a human being. Mm-hmm. And we're turning ourselves into human doing.
Yes. That's so resonates. And one thing that comes up, especially for me, when I'm talking about presence or being and doing, and somebody just said it today, was, well, if we were all being, then nothing would get done. So you're a physician, so tell us how to get things done from that place of being, from the place of being present.
Yeah. So we're having a communication. There are two ways that we could do this. If I am anxious, if I'm nervous, if I, if I have anything that I want to prove anything, or that I'm intelligent, or I know it all, or people need to listen to me, then I would not have the rhythm or the spaciousness to be quiet and to actually listen to you, and to have you speak what it is that's important to you, or you feel that your community, it's important to your community, so that you would like to verbalize it, so that we could have an exchange. And in that exchange, we could create a context, linguistic abstractions, that people, that they listen to it, they will be touched, they will be moved, they would be inspired, so that they might want to do things differently. Now, see, the way you do things is very important. If you go into doing things from a place of being, is a completely different doing that you're doing than being anxious, being nervous, feeling less than, feeling that you're not good enough, feeling that other people are doing it better, and now you're jittery and filled with anxiety and defenses, and you're going into the doing, but it will never be enough. I know a lot of doctors that, one of my favorite books, it should be here somewhere, it's Dead Doctors Don't Lie. You don't even need to read the book. Listen, a lot of doctors, they're really sick because, they're overworked. Look at the residency programs, Look at the way that we're trained. They have one of the highest rate of depression, suicide, delinquent children, drug abuse, right? Alcoholism, one of the highest rate of divorces. One of the things through the endowment, through the Love Button Global Movement, our nonprofit that we're doing, we've created an integrative track, and we teach medical students the arts, the lost arts of being a healer, like soul-centered seeing, heart-centered listening, understanding that it's, and this is an age-old, wisdom, that it's far more important the person who has the disease and than the disease that the person has. We've focused on the pathology. We've focused on the disease rather than the human being that has that particular disease. So that's a different way of looking at it.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. Seeing the person, hearing the person, and the quality of how we do that. So it's like you're saying, doing and being aren't two different things. It's the same thing. It's just how you approach whatever it is you're going to do. It's the how.
Yes.
It's the quality of my inner state. Right.
You're absolutely right. And it's something that you can't fake. If you have a decay underneath, you can't put a veneer and now have beautiful white smile. You got to take care of the decay. You got to take care of the infection. You got to take care of the deep hurt. And in order to do that, it requires time. It requires mindfulness to be able to do that.
I love that. That actually really helped me. The time, reminding me that it takes time, right? Because the alternative is just to keep suffering. And, going back to what you said in the beginning, is acceptance. So acceptance of that. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I read a little bit about the HMFT, the healing magnetic field therapy. Do you have 1 minute to tell us about that before we kind of start closing out?
Of course. No problem. So there's a set of treatments, so that in order to understand that, when you look at the physical body, before it crystallizes, it's just really an energy. If you look at anything, right? Anything, it's, for the most part, it's an empty space, electrons and protons and so forth. So everything is energy. Just think of looking at the waves, like the ocean. The waves, they go up and down, but they go up and down so quickly that you visualize it. Well, if you look outside, the mountains also are moving, but the rate that they're moving is so slow that they might move 1 millimeters every 100 years. That we can't just really sit still and observe it for 100 years to be able to understand that even the mountains are moving. Everything is energy. Everything is related to this aspect of electromagnetic fields. Everything. It creates that. So when you look at various different diseases, if you create a magnetic field, it will create a morphic resonance, and it will help to break down the calcifications, break down the crystallization that's creating the tumor, creating the bone spur, and so forth. So the healing magnetic field is based on that concept. Here, not many people know about it or practice it, but when you look at Europe, I mean, it's very progressive. Some of the other things like apitherapy, bee venom therapy. You know, we have a hive and we do bee venom therapy for infertility, for chronic pain, for rheumatoid arthritis, degenerative joint disease. Most people, they haven't even heard of it. Now you look at China, you look at Brazil, Egypt, you look at Europe, Germany, and they use it significantly as a modality, as a medical modality.
I love that. I love that. So if I wanted to come, or an audience member wanted to come and get treatment, is it something that one needs to travel there, or do you do some online? I thought I saw some online stuff.
Sure. There are various different, there are various different modalities that we offer. Some, it requires their physical presence, a clinical evaluation, and then treatment. And I'm a member of Orthomolecular Institute that was started by David Hawkins and Linus Pauling, who was one of the, I think, 2 or 3 people that won, not 1, but 2 Nobel Prize. And but there are programs that we offer that is based on IPS, for integrative psychosynthesis, which is a particular modality of really supporting people finding the root cause of their issues, their problems, and then providing them with the linguistic abstraction that they could use to shift and change and release behavior patterns that they're limited and not helpful.
Awesome. Well, sign me up for that. So if someone wants to find you, go to the website, the Beehive of Healing website,
Mm-hmm.
or your nonprofit, or what's the best way to find you? I mean, I've already ordered the books, but just,
Sure. So Beehive of Healing, Beehive is spelled with 1 E, BEHIVEOF, healing.com, beehiveofhealing.com. On social media, they can find me at Dr. Habib Sadeghi. So these would be the 2 ways. And then the nonprofit organization, it's called lovebutton.org.
Lovebutton.org. I'm going to be sure to check that out. And I hope the audience.
Yeah, it's an amazing organization. We were featured on Super Bowl 50. 111 million people saw our sign, where 75,000 people picked up a placard, not knowing what it was going to spell. And it spelled "Believe in Love." One of our ambassador is the lead singer of Coldplay, rock band Coldplay. Chris Martin always wear a love button. So we feel very privileged that we can really hold the light for loving, for kindness, for connection, and realizing that we're really all of us, we're really in this together.
I love that. Oh, that's so incredible. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I'm so
My privilege.
grateful.
Thank you for asking.
Yes, really appreciate. We know you have patients and you got to get back to them. And I learned so much, and I'm going to learn a lot more when I read the books, and we'll see, maybe come out and see you sometime.
It would be my privilege. Thank you for your quality of your consciousness. Thank you for your quality of listening. And thank you for doing what you're doing. I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Take care.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.